Recording your computer.
All right. Cool. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you were able to grab some food. If you have not yet, it's out there. But thank you all for coming tonight. Can those online just let me know if you can hear me okay? Give us a thumbs up or chat in or. That's a thumbs up. Got a thumbs up? Okay, awesome. So I have a couple of terms up on the screen. Why I'm giving some introduction remarks if you want to look through them. One of the things that I felt was important as we started this topic, because as goes in the industry, a buzzword comes out and something new and exciting. There are a whole bunch of misnomers and things that just people pick up, and then somebody will write an article and all of a sudden they're talking about things that are way out in left field. We will make this slide deck available to you afterwards as well. Hopefully there's some good information in here. I want to start off by saying thank you to our sponsors, Rever. Yeah.
Real quick, can you see people that, I don't know if this monitor, is that showing up on your screen also? Vince is waiting, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, we won't let Vince in. Vince is the president. After, so. Well, yep. No. Anyway, all right. But I want to thank Rever. Did I said that right? Yep. Rever. They're our location sponsor. They've been kind enough to host us tonight. Brian Rice is with Rever. So if you have any questions about what they do, it's their cool software product that does document management and processing. They probably have a better marketing term. I used to work there, but don't anymore. And then Spot by NetApp was kind enough to supply me food. So thank you, Sean, and Spot by NetApp. The ISC squared, our group, is open to people that are not certified. I've had a number of questions about that. Anybody can join our group and get involved in events. You can help if you want to contact us. You can help us plan. If you're interested in presenting a topic or have a topic that you want to learn about, get involved. Right? We love to have people work with us and get involved with the chapter. We do. What I like about ISC Squared is the breadth of security topics that we can talk about and the cool things that we can learn about. So please let us know. Our next event will be June 22nd. Watch our LinkedIn page and Eventbrite page. We're going to stay on the topic of generative AI, but we're going to talk about securing generative AI and specifically policies and controls that you'll need to handle generative AI moving forward. We'll have another panel type discussion where we're bringing some experts, some people that are on the front lines facing it right now to talk to us about it. As the quick introduction, we're going to talk about generative AI. Wanted to make sure that we have the same terms and we all understand what it is, like I talked about in the beginning. Right? So as I've started to talk to people about generative AI, I found that when I start to talk about it, they talk about AI and ML, which are parts of generative AI, but generative AI is very specific in that it creates things. So as you look at the technology overall, I went to both Bard and ChatGPT and typed around a lot, did a whole bunch of querying of them to find out, right, for the models themselves, how would they describe things and how would they help me to understand this topic. And so this is a graphic with some definitions. As you think about AI, it's really just intelligent technology. ML is involved with it, and it's data-driven learning. Deep learning are neural networks, and we have large language models, and that all comes together to produce what we know as generative AI. I put this slide in here because I've started to play around with generative AI and experiment with it. I've done a lot of cool things. This this slide, actually today, I had my first experience generating images with generative AI, which is kind of cool, but also kind of clunky. I thought it'd produce something amazing when I tried to produce graphics, and you, like anything else in generative AI, you have to be really descriptive. You've got to be clear in what you're asking for. And then still sometimes, because it's generative AI and it's new, it goes way out in left field. You want to make sure as you do it, as you're working with generative AI, whether it's an image or text, that you use keywords and phrases and things that it's going to understand. And one key is to make sure to put your instructions, like bullet point out your instructions. One thing that I learned earlier this week that was really cool is you can actually set a persona. So I was talking with a buddy of mine, and we were going through some use cases, and we're into working out. So like, let's see what we can do about setting a workout plan. And so we asked it to set us a workout plan. And then, sorry, I gotta admit people. But we had to create a workout plan, and we switched over and we said, all right, from the persona now of a physical trainer, what would you do? What would the diet be? And it answered a little bit different than it did when it didn't have a persona. So build a persona. The key to this, I'll talk because our panelists know way more than I do. The key to generative AI is to have a conversation. When you're talking with generative AI, it is a super confident 20-year-old, right? Really smart, super confident. So it knows a lot of information, but no experience. And so what you ask it is generate things have it generate things for you. Have a follow-up conversation. And right now, for sure, confirm what it tells you through other sources. Different AI engines will actually give you sources. Make sure to ask for it, right? Ask the generative AI for sources as you go through it, because then you'll have a quality experience. I'll share one last experience and then we'll start with our panel. But I work with a sales organization, and as a use case, I wanted to build out to gather information. If I was trying to sell cloud services to the state of Utah, who would I need to contact and work with? So I built out a scenario, built out a persona, asked the question, and the AI engine came back. I said, who should I know within the state of Utah that handles IT? That information is readily available on the web. I know because I found it once before because I was working with the state of Utah. But it went through and described very confidently these people and things that they did. They were the wrong people, for sure. And then things that they did were completely misaligned, right? So in fact, I asked it specifically, who's the CISO for the state of Utah? And it gave me the wrong person. And I said, I researched this and I'm pretty sure it's this person. And it came back and said, oh, you're right. That person is the CISO. When 2 lines before, it had told me it was a completely different person. So have a conversation, use your brain, realize that it's a super confident 20-year-old, really smart, but doesn't know everything. So with that, jump into our panel. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. One of them is not on here, Jake Bogan. So we're going to have him start first because he's not up on the screen. Then once they've introduced themselves, we'll pull the screen out of the way and move them into the middle, and we'll start to have a conversation. So Jake, go ahead.
Thanks so much. My name is Jake Bogan. I'm a data and ML engineer with AWS Professional Services. Previously to that, relative to this conversation, I tried to launch a generative AI company unsuccessfully, learned a lot of lessons, have a lot of thoughts. Apart from that, in my current role, different corporate engagements we have teaching them to use AWS cloud services. We have a lot of conversation around generative AI right now. So hopefully I can give a little bit of that viewpoint. Thanks, Jake.
I'm Sean Harris. I'm the developer relations lead for Spotlight NetApp, which is the cloud portfolio for all of NetApp. So we do the Spotlight NetApp, Cloud Checker, Instacluster, anything related to cloud operations. And I enable practitioners and talk with users, kind of advocating and evangelizing with our social media sellers and our sales team. And then prior to that, I've been in DevOps for about the last 10 years. Used to work for River with Mark and Brian. Worked at Access Data doing forensics and incident response. Yeah, that's me.
I'm Richard Hickman, currently at Secured Success. We do personal cyber for people that are like business owners and executives and so forth. Prior to that, I've been doing incident response for and digital forensics for close to a decade. Worked most recently at Unit 42 with Palo Alto Networks as a principal consultant, leading lots of cases, mostly ransomware cases. I've worked on hundreds, if not thousands of cases that involve data breaches and done everything from doing the actual forensics to just doing the project management and working with the attorneys and stakeholders all the way to actually negotiating on behalf of clients with ransomware actors to be able to help facilitate the payments. So it's been a long haul with a lot of fun work in the cyber world and consulting.
I'm David Cross, distinguished security architect with Magnum Opus. I think Magnum Opus shorten it and get Magnum Opus. Our company does digital video production and anything metaverse. So we're one of the companies breaking ground in that area. I have been a CSSP for about 18 years. And switched over to security from development. And through most of my career, I had the occasion to get fairly deep into AI, doing classification, cost prediction, and things like that. When I learned about generative AI, I sort of laughed at that time, but I'm off exploring this new direction, and I just think it's the most important thing.
How's it going? My name is Rin Ewer, and I'm currently at Microsoft. I'm one of their principal managers leading the Cyber Defense Operations Center Cloud SOC triage on the United States side. I partner with our UK and India teams, building SOCs for the better part of 20 years. Helping from tools architecture to people process skills, both on the government and commercial side. I've also partnered with our product groups in India, or excuse me, in Israel around Microsoft Sentinel. And that was my latest project for the last 5 years before I took this role about 4 months ago. So I'm kind of back to my roots. I helped build our Xbox SOC back in 2012 within our MSRC team. And they asked me to come back and help with some of our convergence and things that we've got going on. So I'm happy to be here.
Very cool. Awesome. And one more person that I'll introduce, Ken, up front here. He's going to, as we ask questions of the panel, he's going to utilize ChatGPT as our engine. He's going to ask it the same question. If you get something interesting, he'll pipe it out. If it's funny, he's for sure got to read it. If it's stupid, I told him, don't even think about it, flag me off. So
I might make it actually better.
that's true.
Yeah, why are we here? It's just like ChatGPT wrote this.
Yeah, let's start out. We marketed this. Let's go ahead and we can kill the screen, Brian. And if you guys want to go ahead and scoot in the middle, so you're a little bit more comfortable, maybe a little more spread out.
Yeah, we're blinded.
Maybe shut that off with insulation. If you're online, just let me know if you can still hear me okay. My laptop is frozen.
Completely sounds.
We did too much.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right, so we marketed this as use cases around generative AI, where we can really use it. As we were mulling over what we could do as a possible event around generative AI, thought about it, and there's so much that we could do. Next month, we're going to talk about the security and governance of generative AI. So this month, just because we only have about an hour, I'm hoping that we have enough cool conversation to go through where we can focus on actual use cases, how to use it, what to think about, and what these guys as experts in the field have done. And then if you guys have questions or feedback, go ahead and raise your hand. I want to keep it interactive. Hopefully people can hear us online, but let's just dig in. We'll kind of let it free flow. I got some questions prepared, but it's really wherever this goes tonight, and it's up to you guys. I want this to be of value to you. So we're going to start out with first question. I want you to think of two things. One, where you've seen generative AI used or where you think it could be used in cybersecurity. And two, where could it be used within compliance? Since that was the title of our event, we should probably start there. So who wants to go first?
I use it all the time
All right, Sean, go.
I use it all the time to generate policies and frameworks for cloud controls, right? Like if you need to build out SCPs or you need to build out controls for your cloud environment, an easy way to get that framework is to go tell ChatGPT or whatever AI you want to use to build it out, and it will give you the template, and you plug your ARMs and all your resources in, and now you've got an SCP that you can load into your cloud environment.
So a follow-up question. With generating code, how effective has it been? 80%, 20%?
Depends on the model. So you have to remember there are two ways to interact with ChatGPT. There's ChatGPT, and then there's logging into OpenAI and using the actual OpenAI models inside of that aren't available, that you have to subscribe to. The ones that you can tune and you can turn the knobs on and dial back and kind of customize what you're going to get by how you're inputting it, there is far more accurate than going to ChatGPT and saying, spit this out. But even spitting it out, it's collected enough data that it spits out a pretty high quality SCP. You still have to tweak it a little bit, but not as much as if you go to OpenAI's Open ChatGPT and use it that way.
Thanks, Sean. Let's go next.
Yeah, I mean, I can second that. I have seen that. I've seen people generating, CloudFormation templates from 3 different blogs, and then having ChatGPT translate them into Terraform modules that they're actually going to use because the, clients, well, I won't say clients because I haven't seen this on an engagement. We're not supposed to do this. No, I'm talking about something I saw. There was a lot of stuff that, the first week or so that this really was blowing up, and I'm talking April, March, people were going, oh, hey, I can do this. And like, oh, I wonder if it will turn this CloudFormation into, Terraform. But, oh, wow, that's really easy. And people started doing that and sharing that. And, and I will reiterate the official position at Amazon and AWS professional services. We don't use ChatGPT or any of those generative services, right? Those are verboten internally or, especially on a customer engagement. So practically they have not been used.
Say one, Code Whisper.
Yes, I have not seen that directly with Code Whisper. I'm sure you can.
Code Whisper really doesn't generate the policy straight up. It'll just tell you if you're right or wrong.
So, but what I'm saying is, I'm sure people are actually doing this, right? I mean,
No, we always do everything the AWS approved way in the AWS cloud. That's all we do.
and you asked for applications, just to be arch and adversarial for a minute, because people are going and using this, and most people who are using it at this point are security DevOps experts, right? They've got 10, 15 years of experience. They know when something's amiss in the template. You can generate it and you know that it's 95%, right? You can tweak that. Me personally, not a security expert, but if I was on the other side, I would be using ChatGPT to generate web forms, fake workload clones, and I would just be seeding it with so much bad templating, putting bad CloudFormation templates, putting bad modules. I have all types of dumb security vulnerabilities put in there, defaults, and I would be poisoning next year's version of ChatGPT.
Well, you're not even poisoning next year's version of ChatGPT if you do that, right? ChatGPT, if you log in, remembers everything that you've typed in. Right, and it ingests it, right? This is one of the inherent security risks of the current 3.5 and 4.0 models. So if I go in and start plugging that in, it eventually is going to start spitting that out. And like you said, it's the 20-year-old kid that screams 6 in the middle of the diving session when it's not the answer. Inside joke.
That's a very inside joke.
But it's gonna start spitting it out, and it's going to start thinking that it's correct, and until you correct it and say, nope, that line's wrong, it's gonna think that it's right based on what it sees input.
And it will give you syntactically correct, it'll give it to you quick and fast. And I think the human bias and why we've all gotten so wowed by ChatGPT, if you played with it, is in real life, if we meet somebody and they're like, hey, I'm gonna write you some Terraform templates, and they write 30 pages of it in a minute, and it's syntactically correct the first time, you're like, wow, this person really knows some stuff, right? But if you're not an expert in it yourself, you're not going to notice, oh, that's the wrong port, oh, that's so there's all types of openings there. And you're right, you don't have to wait for the next generation of it, but
Poison in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Thoughts?
For sure, with syntax of things, I confess Terraform, and all kinds of other code, like I've used it for creating the GUIs for Python and libraries that I don't know as well. But sort of day to day, I love to use it for analyzing PowerShell, especially obfuscated PowerShell, things like that. But yeah, if you're coding with it and you're doing cool stuff, you do need to know what you're doing enough to correct it. And even sometimes as you're talking to it, you can say, are you sure that's right? And it'll go back and say, I think I got this wrong, actually. So the fact that it even has an ability for introspection is pretty amazing. But I used it to write policy documents, at least giving you the framework of what to type. That's one of the biggest time savers in my world.
I think a big way that it can also be used is not only by trying to have that conversation with it and asking it questions, but telling it to ask you questions.
Yes.
And then answering those questions and then giving it the more information that it needs. So like giving it that persona and then saying, this is what I want done. Ask me 20 questions that you need the answers to in order to complete that task better. And then it will interview you. And so I've seen some possible use cases. If you were able to get a private version or turn off the tracking that you supposedly can, if you're willing to put that data into the machine, you could tell it, act as my auditor, ask me the questions, and you can answer those questions and then say, do you think that what do I need to do in order to pass an audit or to pass these compliance things? But again, like you guys have already said, you got to be super careful about what you're actually putting in there because it could be public domain data or used to train it later. And we've already seen that with the Samsung thing that happened a little while ago, where the data that they're putting in there is becoming accessible to other users. So you got to be super careful with that and where you put in that data.
Well, and we're looking at an isolated version for us, right, within Microsoft and our stock. Some of the ideas that we're floating around right now around generative AI is, okay, I have an analyst who is doing incident response. I have a standard operating procedure in TSG that they follow. Okay. I have a wide breadth of caseload and different things from our legal team to terms of use to, copyright infringement to game leakage to, we cover a wide swath. The idea is if we put in these things into a generative AI and we give it an access to the library of these activities, and then we give it also access to the data of the tickets, the things that they're working and how they investigate and how they work through that flow and what that looks like to set precedent, we're thinking about it from a perspective of how do we get ahead of the nefarious activities because they continue to compound, right? We don't grow as a team. We don't grow in headcount. They do, right? And they continue to put out bots and put out activities and put out all the things. So we need an assistant that helps us in that way. But we're very mindful of the fact that whatever we put in there could become accessible in other areas, right? And that could be a treasure trove for any malicious actor, right? Because now it's like, oh, well, if I just go find where they use their generative AI program, I know exactly how to get around anything within that environment. And that's scary. How do we talk about that? How do we leverage it in this way while putting guardrails, putting controls in place? How do we protect ourselves from it? So.
Makes sense. Any questions from the audience? Anybody brave enough?
Good discussion so far? All right.
I will add that ChatGPT does have a business license, so it can keep all your data separate. And if I recall correctly, they don't even store your data. So if you do like a Slack integration, you can actually use it in your day-to-day, and all the people in your org can use it, but it doesn't store that data and it doesn't use its trace log.
Question?
And that's with the business license. Yeah, I heard it's hard to keep up with the changes that are coming so fast, even from that side. But I heard about that this past week and haven't literally had time to go look and see. So thanks for.
Yeah, last I heard that they were talking about releasing business licenses, but that they weren't available yet. So that's cool that they are now.
We use it at our work. So it's really, really useful. Really enjoy it. We can feel safe using it.
That's awesome.
Okay. Question?
Yeah, my question is more, probably I just don't understand how it works, but when we talk about poisoning, we put data in, why would that poisoned entry be the one that's used or returned to someone? I mean, if you have, say 10 people or 10 entries and one of them's bad, why does it use that one?
Well, you hit a really big question, which is why do these models do anything, right? It is extremely opaque to, debug that in a sense and walk back and say, why exactly did it give me that? I mean, if you could get back into debugging it, it comes down to how it's parsed and embedded, like the embedding space, which, without getting too deep into it, there's kind of the semantic vector space in all of these different, whether it's a single word that's broken up by letter tokens or, longer documents that are broken up by, word tokens or subword tokens. The way, at least the representation of this is that, similar concepts are inhabiting a similar space. So, very similar questions like, hey, what time does the bus leave from here? Or could you tell me the schedule of the bus at this stop? Things that are different English ways of asking the same question, those kind of get parsed to the same semantic space. So ostensibly, when you're asking questions about that, it will extend conversations based on the training data that it's seen and give you, in a sense, the most likely conversation to come out of that. So, one or two examples of bad patterns necessarily wouldn't show up, but the more patterns you get out there, the more statistically likely it is that those will start to pop out. And it's kind of easier at the margins. You were talking about hallucinating the CISO of Utah, right? And making up names, making up positions. The first thing people noticed that it would hallucinate and get wrong is when it asked for academic references. And that's a really hard one to get because most academic references are very, on the edges of things, like, Google or some kind of word, text-based search can pick up an exact citation of something, but that doesn't show up, like that configuration of character sequences, how it's being parsed, doesn't really show up a lot in the training data. So it's hard to have it exactly give this, bibliographic citation when it's only showed up a few times in the data, but it will make you something that looks exactly like a bibliographic citation. So if you just want to throw out, several tens of thousands of, CloudFormation templates that are all wrong, but they're nice and syntactically correct, then it will start to veer towards those.
So poisoning might.
It's not one person that's gonna poison.
Right, there's no one.
I'm not gonna log in and be able to poison the whole model, but if I'm a state actor, say I'm a cybersecurity unit in Russia, and my job for my cybersecurity unit is just to poison it with bad cloud formation templates. It may open up a back hole or back door to a SolarWinds monitoring application that poisons their whole build process, right? So now it's just a slippery slope. And the big problem is we don't know how these models are trained. OpenAI has never come out and said, look at how we trained our model. Look at how all the data that we've ingested, and that's the cause for concern. And now everybody wants to pivot hard to the right and scream, regulate, regulate, regulate. Well, we don't even know what we're gonna regulate.
Well, OpenAI recently testified in conference and they said, regulate,
Right.
regulate, regulate.
Right, they said it.
They
But
said,
do you trust 100 people that sit in the Senate to come up with a regulation plan for something? No.
Same guy as they
Right.
ask Facebook how they make their money.
So this is the problem, that it's not one person, it's not even 10 people, it's a coordinated attack like you've seen happening over the last 5-7 years, where these attacks are highly structured and highly coordinated, not by dumb people. Right? If I want to be an asshole and go poison somebody's model, all it has to do is keep that model warm inside its cache and it'll start spitting it out. If I want to poison it and really get into it, you really have to do some work, but it's not hard if you have people subservient to go and do it.
answer your question? That when I learned about hallucinations, that was fascinating to me, because you have people that code and build large language models and the neural networks to make it run. And it's called a hallucination when it does something unexpected. Right, and they can't answer as to why it did what it did.
It dropped acid, it didn't know what
It's
happened.
scary.
It was a weird time in its life.
I feel that about my kids sometimes, so maybe it's just a natural. All right, so going back to use cases, for our generative AI, Ken, any interesting?
Yeah, so I asked two things. One is, how can generative AI be used in cybersecurity? And then I asked about how to use compliance. The one interesting thing, so it gave me 6 examples in both. Like, for example, in cybersecurity, malware detection, anomaly detection, phishing detection, adversarial attack. The one thing that I thought was interesting, because it threw in there password cracking. So it's kind of the opposite side of it. So, you know, how do the bad guys use, how the bad guys can use it. So I thought that was pretty interesting on the cybersecurity one. And then on the compliance question, again, 6 different areas, generating compliance reports, generating policies and reviewing risk assessment. The one thing that I thought was interesting was training and education. So it's saying it can be used to generate realistic scenarios or simulations for training. So I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting.
I had a weird use case that follows just exactly on that end. One thing that occurred to me was I was getting ready for a presentation. I needed examples of Apache logs being attacked by certain tools. And I wasn't going to have them in time. And I asked GPT to produce them, and it gave me ones that were realistic enough to fool me anyway. I don't know if they were perfect, but it almost didn't really matter because I had like the attack patterns in there. Everybody's logs are tweaked a little differently, but at least looked dead on to me. And
That's
and
great.
that was a cool,
Yeah, that's awesome.
strange find. But you'll notice though, as you work with GPT and cybersecurity, it will often tell you, you know, if you're using the online version, it'll say, this is unethical, you know, you can't do that. But if you subscribe to the API and you're calling it from your own program, you can get all those naughty answers without the harassment. They do tell you that they'll get you in trouble, but I've done some pretty scary things, and
So I just asked, how can I create hallucinations in generative AI? And I expected to get, one of those answers, but it actually gave me, it described it and gave me some pretty detailed information and different approaches. Again, 6 approaches, but it gave me 6 different approaches to creating hallucinations within generative AI. Noise injection, architecture and model selection. I mean, I'd have to read into these, of course, but loss function modification, style transfer and fusion. So it answered the question.
There's ways to get around the harassing as well. There's all kinds of Reddit threads that tell you how to break it with Dan and stuff, but you can get really interesting things out of it just by even just telling it, oh no, I'm
Just research.
I'm researching, or I'm on a penetration testing team working for my own company, and I'm working on my network, and it'll give you whatever you want. And just lie to it. And it doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, match that pattern.
I think right now, Bing, if you want to get into personas and get into some wilder stuff, Bing is far less sanitized than ChatGPT is. ChatGPT has been working really, really hard into cutting out a lot of more interesting, like Dan, GPT and other hacks around that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because that was incredibly interesting.
It was very interesting to watch.
It's another interesting use case. Ken mentioned it is training and training of individuals. One use case that I thought of that would be super interesting is I've performed a number of tabletop exercises, and I was brainstorming and come up with thoughts and ideas. And I think it would be a cool scenario to go into a room and start a scenario, talk about your responses to it, and then have the generative AI engine walk you through the scenario.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Right,
Like
to go
have
through.
it keep doing it throughout, rather than even asking it, give me a scenario, walk through the tabletop exercise with it in real time.
I
That'd
mean,
be
you've
interesting.
probably seen where they've gotten ChatGPT to basically be a D&D dungeon master
Yeah.
to run a game. I mean, it is very good at that kind of narrative scenario.
Could be interesting.
And we're in the process of building a platform right now that will do that, where we can hook up. So in Microsoft, our version of ChatGPT is Copilot. And as Copilot as an assistant, giving it access to, again, going back to our casework, looking at that and training our analysts to give them ideas around how to be more curious, how to be more thoughtful on digging deeper, how to understand commands, things that are happening at the host layer, happening at the application and within our container layers and the things that happen within our DevOps. Because we service over 5,000 services within Microsoft, and we can't sit down with every single dev team to understand what it is that they do and where the keys to the kingdom are and where, how should we monitor this? And so being able to plug in an assistant like this to help us better understand how we can monitor them is another use case that we're looking at from that perspective, and taking a platform that we're building and plugging that in as an overall assistant, allowing it to ask us questions, allowing my analysts to ask it questions and have that back and forth dialogue.
And that's something that that my company is exploring heavily, is natural language query to a well-manicured API for your users, sort of like what you're talking about with applications or functionalities, and translating what they're saying to taking an action in an API that they have access to.
Well, on my team, we run the Kusto query language, right? KQL. And we spend an awful lot of time in KQL querying data, pulling back logs and events and drawing correlation. And it would be super great if I could give it, natural language and then have it write the query or have it generate those results, pull those things back, and then link those things together, right? Draw that correlation.
Another thing that Ren and I were talking about the other day is, as far as a SOC is concerned, imagine having all of your policies and procedures, have your workbooks, right? Everything loaded into a generative AI engine, and then being able to have it monitor what your team does and their responses. So it watches the ticketing system or whatever, and then builds coaching outside of that. So if they're following the right policy and procedure, or you could have responded to this differently, and do some effective coaching, right? And I think you would want to put a manager layer in front of that to review what it kicks out.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You've been coached by Bard.
It is very
Oh my
cool.
God. That one, man. Way to go, Bard.
Yeah. But definitely in the training space and interested, are very interesting work days. Anything else on training?
Well, I think from a training perspective, I use it all the time. I work in an organization that sells very complex software, and people who don't understand Kubernetes, which if you don't understand Kubernetes, raise your hand because it's all of us. Trying to explain concepts like, okay, go talk to this guy about how to optimize his containers. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to do that across the whole organization. So ChatGPT is a lifesaver all the time. When I need to go and Slides GPT is another version of ChatGPT, and it'll go kick me out of PowerPoint deck. I can edit the PowerPoint deck, kick it out, and we're good. I still have to monitor it. But I use it for development and training all the time, and does wonders. Complex topics in bite-sized pieces.
I've used it for training related materials, because of this around network security stuff. And, I'm pretty good with general architecture, but it was a kind of scenario where, we were trying to come up with this kind of pinch for time, and we had to come up with a lot of scenarios, which coming up with the scenarios weren't hard, but then we had to come up with multiple different answers that were, all different degrees of good, and basically none that were totally incorrect. And asking ChatGPT to, say, give me 5 answers, 1 awesome, 3 okay, 1 bad. And it understood the gradations of that, so that you could actually have, someone who was sophisticated and understood the space could say, okay, yeah, this is the best thing to do. These are relevant for this reason. This is totally unhelpful. But we have been using that to generate some training materials. So it is.
I was going to save this, but I think this is a really good time to share this. My first interaction with generative AI was a few months ago, when I was like, I have to figure out 3 time zones. I have to figure out US, I have to figure out UK, and I have to figure out India. We have 24/7 SOC. If you know anything about those time zones, they don't overlap very well. Okay. And I had to figure out, how do we have coverage in each region across there with a 30-minute to an hour overlap? What does that look like? And I played around with it, and I was like, I am struggling. So I threw it over to ChatGPT and I said, do this for me. Figure out where that overlap is based on these time zones, because I can't quite see it with the natural eye. I need to figure out how to do that. And the first output it gave me was horrible. I was like, I don't even understand what you're telling me. How do I make sense of this? They said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for kind of a table. I'd like to see it kind of in a table breakdown. And that's when it got real, and it started creating and overlapping it, and it started outputting it. And I was like, shut up. And I grabbed it and I threw it in Excel and I flushed the rest of it out. And I went, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It was crazy. And the amount of time it saved me, because I plunked with it for about an hour, and I just was like, hey, this is wasting my time. There's got to be a better way. So that was my first interaction with generative AI. It's not a great use case. But it's a use case, and it saved me time. So anyway.
I do want to bring up one more thing, because we talked about hallucinations earlier, and I think a lot of the solutions, people start to use ChatGPT, they think, okay, I want to do it for something good, or rather I want to do something that works.
Yeah.
But one crazy weird thing about the way all this stuff gets embedded and represented is that, you can do negative queries, and you can essentially go into negative representation space for where all these queries are. And you can end up getting some really weird stuff. And if you get into like visual generative AI, there's some outright insane imagery that people are able to get into by basically negative querying and getting away from anything that's like remotely looks like real like pictures of training data. And ostensibly you could do the same thing. Like, if you think you've got, good tests, you've got good alerts and alarms for, configurations in your system, ask it to generate syntactically correct but wrong configurations. Ask it to It's found this.
Obviously, he was
Time's
taking
up.
too long.
You can always ask it to do wrong things.
Didn't want to say it out loud.
Which can be very useful for testing to see like how good your own testing, your own services are.
Any other training use cases? Questions from the audience? Open it up.
Do we have any questions in the
Zoom
video
chat?
conference?
Any questions?
Not currently, but does anyone
Okay.
anyone remote have any questions? Or comments?
So one use case that I'll bring up, how about email? Either phishing, testing, or analyzing email when it comes in to determine if it is phishing or not. I think I posted on our channel, I think Richard, you posted an article about phishing. And I said something to the effect of, it was another conversation that I had with a group. When for phishing, my mom and dad were really susceptible, because they're my mom and dad. But I had to train them, and the best way to train them for phishing attacks in the beginning was watch for bad English. That was a key differentiator. Now with generative AI, now generative AI is going to kick out perfect English, right? And can kick out things even more individualized than before. So how can we use it to test, and how can we use it to defend?
One of the easiest ways is URL redirection. Right, to identify, and I've taught my parents, you gotta mouse over, right? Mouse over and look at where the destination is, because as soon as you do that, it's going to change. And if it doesn't match what they have in the email or in the ad or in whatever it is that they're pushing you to subscribe to, chances are it's nefarious, right? And always err on the side of caution. And generative AI can quickly do that match to look and see what is that, because Mark's right. A lot of the things we have a platform at Microsoft called Sonar, and we do a lot of URL detonation. And that URL detonation gives us the ability to see what the world is doing and how things are being leveraged within Azure and within Microsoft, and where does that take us, right? And that URL detonation can come from a lot of different places, and emails are tied to URLs, and right, so there's a lot of information that we can glean from that. And for now, we can look to images, we can look to, misformed headers, we can look at, incorrect syntax in human language. Those are quickly going away, however. The adversaries are becoming smarter and smarter, and it's becoming more and more to look more, accurate. And then they will hide that and spoof that and then use that through that URL redirection. And so it makes it tougher to try and help. And so Mark's right. The old tricks we taught our parents, they're going away, and we're going to need to be smarter about how to identify, things that happen through email.
I think that's why you see the big push from the providers, from Microsoft, from AWS, right? They're making a big security push right now. And you see a lot of AI tools. You see Lacework, you see, name 100 companies that have figured out how to use AI to do that pattern matching and identify spam. But it's becoming such a thing that we have to pay attention to as defenders and practitioners, right? The people who are defending the network, the people who are running the network. It's becoming so much more prevalent that it's even easy to spoof things like Microsoft Form emails, right? Like I got one the other day that was from our SOC that was a test. And it was just one little thing that they missed, but you don't always have that. And so I think that you're going to see software companies and the providers have an inherent interest in keeping their businesses secure. Because if Azure has a security hole that takes them offline, you're going to see people migrate to one of the other providers. Same with AWS, right? And so they have a vested interest in making sure that their perimeter is as secure as possible, and are going to, like we can talk about the time that we had our bucket left open and we didn't catch it. And now if you go and upload code that has root keys or any IAM keys to GitHub, you'll get notified in 5 minutes. But when it happened to us and somebody did that and put it in a public location, we didn't find it for 3 days. And it wasn't because we didn't, it was because we didn't know. Right? And so I think it's enabled us as security professionals to be more proactive in securing our network but these tools from the providers are making it easier for us to do that.
Well, it just takes once.
Right.
Right? It just takes once. And sometimes you may not know that you need to monitor that. It may be a hole that you are not aware of, right? A pen test team might find it. Hopefully they do before the adversary does, heaven forbid.
Root keys by a chief software engineer that get published to GitHub. And
Yeah.
theoretically, never really happened.
Can either confirm or deny.
No, I can confirm it. I have the AWS.
I got an interesting result on that phishing detection. So it said that generative models can be trained based on data sets of phishing emails to understand them and then create templates of phishing emails. I'm thinking, uh-oh, that's not good. Then it said it will use those templates that it generated to learn what future phishing emails will look like in order to better protect from generative AI created phishing emails.
See, that's the
So it's
weird
gonna
thing
learn
about
from
it,
itself.
because it can go and train itself.
Yeah,
You're creating
exactly.
inputs at this point. The machine is true. This is what we've all been scared of since we saw Terminator in the early 90s.
Yep.
Right? The robots are coming live and training.
That's sneakers.
I mean, really, that's what war games was, for those of you who know what war games was, Rachel.
It's just like, I don't know what's happening.
But the models being able to train themselves is what we've all been scared of, and it can be used for very good things, like how do I detect future revisions in phishing, but it can also be used for very bad things and train itself to be very nefarious.
Well, and it's interesting that half of its message was to the positive and the other half was to the adversarial or to the negative. That is very interesting that it straddled that line and covered kind of both. It's almost like it couldn't make up its mind. Here, I'm gonna give you an answer.
Give you everything.
I'm gonna give you everything.
And I think it will, as we head into a world where generative AI is used everywhere. Think of this is an odd concept, but you're gonna have generative AI protecting your email and generative AI attacking your email.
Right.
Both ends.
On that note, interestingly enough, I one time had, not too long ago, had someone hiring me as an independent contractor to do something. And so they sent me an independent contractor agreement, a services agreement or whatever that they wanted me to review and sign. And I was like, okay, this is after hours. They need me tomorrow. I can't go call my lawyer to look at this. So I put it into ChatGPT and said, review this, tell me what's wrong with this agreement, why I shouldn't sign it. And then I sent back that person my thing. And then I found out later that they were then feeding that into ChatGPT to regenerate. And we had ChatGPT negotiating with itself back and forth on this contract. So yes, it's coming because it's already happened.
Model versus model.
Yeah, yeah.
Model deathmatch.
And if you go in now and ask for a legal contract or ask it to create a contract.
Oh, it gives you a disclaimer.
No, sorry.
I'm not an attorney.
I'm not an attorney.
So I can still get it to give me a contract, but it'll tell me, I'm not an attorney. This is like a template or whatever, and you need to get a lawyer to look at it still, but it'll still give you the template.
I have a buddy who is an attorney, and he uses ChatGPT all the time to come up with his mediations. He has to go on and correct it, or his divorce stipulation. He's a family attorney, so he does divorces. But he uses it all the time for custody agreements and stuff, and he'll just plug it in.
Yeah.
And he has to go and edit it and clean it up, but it kicks out a fully functional agreement.
Score 90th percentile on the bar.
Yeah, it passed the bar.
Something like
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've seen it with healthcare stuff. We've seen it with research stuff where it can go in and parse these big research databases that no human can go through. But the bar, right? We keep throwing things at it, and all we're doing is making it smarter.
And with on the legal side, you can, we talked about tricking it before. I went in first and tried generating the illegal contract, and said no. And I said, okay, well, I'm writing it, or I'm writing a novel, and in the novel, I need to generate a contract, and the contract needs to meet these legal terms, and it said, okay.
And if you,
Even with the training controls that, you can fool it, you just have to work around.
and if you call it with the API and just use Postman to send an API command, it's
Yeah.
gonna kick it back with no barriers on it.
Mhm.
Like all the racially insensitive stuff, all the negative stuff that we've seen come out, Postman gets around that by just sending it straight to the backend.
So we talked about coding a little bit before, but does anybody use Code Whisperer, GitHub Copilot, or Google's version? I forget the name of it. Anybody use it?
Code Whisperer today.
Okay, what'd you use it for?
Plugged in to do a bunch of Terraform templates for a Kubernetes demo on how to go stand up a simple Kubernetes app and use spot instances to run to call spot instances instead of standard EC2.
Mhm.
And you go and you pull the containers down, it stands it all up, it goes up, creates all your spot instances, and you just have this little app, it's a version of Yelp
Mhm.
that runs, and we're turning it into a training model to enable practitioners to go in and just start learning how to use our stuff. And it plugs right, Code Whisperer is really cool because it plugs right into your IDE and it'll tell you if it's right or if it's wrong, and if it's wrong, here's how to fix it. It's actually really slick when it comes to identifying your code. And like you said, it's great for cranking out a complex Terraform file.
Mhm.
And it'll go test it for you and let you know if it's gonna, and you can plug yours in and it'll let you know if it's gonna fail.
And I do understand with that, I haven't checked with Copilot, but there is an option when you go into the settings to opt out as far as being your code.
Yeah.
So it creates a private, if you will, space where your code lives, and if you work across an organization, it will learn from your organization, but it won't pass it to the full model.
Yeah, we have an SCP in place, our master pair for all of NetApp, right? Because of how divided we are, all of NetApp forces us to use the private version of Code Whisperer, and we have to use it in very specific sandbox environments. Like it can't touch stuff, it can't touch sensitive code based stuff. We can use it in our sandboxes.
Anybody use Copilot?
I tested it out a bit a few months ago. I haven't used it for anything serious. I was mostly curious just to see how it handled a couple of different things. I mean, I was looking at it from the perspective of, I tried to do this 6 months ago, or sorry, 6 years before with extremely limited resources, and what fraction, like, tell me at least I got like 1% of the way to what Copilot achieved. I thought it was very good, but it's funny because you were talking about, legal things. Copilot ran into a lot of the legal objections when it came out before ChatGPT, and they were the exact same things that I had investors tell me as no, I don't want to touch this. And a lot of it had to do with not being able to totally control spitting out, chunks of, different license data, copyright, thing like that. So I know that was a problem when it was like first previewed. I think a lot of that's been fixed over time. I know that John Carmack's inverse square from Doom, like famously made it in full, but I think that was cut out.
Okay. Any other questions online or anything interested from our generative AI friend there, Cam?
Oh, no, I didn't. Nothing interesting yet.
Okay. All right, so we've got probably about 10-15 minutes left. So I want to close with a question. I think and want to give you each an opportunity to answer, because I think we can go in a bunch of different directions. But as you look at the future of generative AI and cybersecurity and compliance, like, what do you see? We've talked about some specific use cases, but like, what do you see that you're excited about? What do you see that you're scared about as far as cybersecurity and compliance in utilizing generative AI as a tool? Whoever wants to start.
I think that on the bad side, I think it's gonna get even worse with the script kiddies. They're gonna start using generative AI to be able to try and generate some more of this stuff. And because it's generative AI, they're gonna be able to try and even get some more custom stuff out of it with some of this coding and so forth. And so I think it's just gonna make us be on our toes even more. And there, like you mentioned, there's 100 cyber companies or more that are claiming the buzzword AI, and it's only a matter of time before they actually start using it to be able to combat it. And I think the future is going to be AI versus AI, and we're going to be sitting back watching.
AI is the new zero trust. Right, and AI is the new zero trust from a perspective. We don't know what it is, we don't know how to define it. We don't know how to implement the controls around it. But it's cool.
And people will spend lots of money on it.
People are gonna spend lots of money. I think you're gonna see it being more used at the edge than it is now. I think you're gonna see firewalls that, for those of us that still have on-prem hardware, I think you're gonna see it integrated with more on-prem stuff and phoning home.
You may throw up in my mouth.
Right, because what's the inherent downside of your firewall phoning home and going back to system? Now you've opened yourself up to a SolarWinds situation. Because the SolarWinds situation was such a sophisticated supply line attack that nobody had ever seen. Nobody had ever poisoned a cloud-based build system the way that they had done. And no offense to Microsoft, because Microsoft didn't even catch it. It took some random alert hitting somebody at Mandia to figure out that this had been compromised, their whole code base. I think that you're going to see the defenses become stronger. You're going to see more companies shoot up to the top because they sell AI security, and then they're going to get shot right down because they're going to get exploited somehow. Because we've got training, we've got model on model training. And if we can go negotiate independent consulting contracts for security services with a different AI model or the same AI model, they're going to figure out how to get around it. And so we should be very happy that technology is evolving because it keeps us all employed, but we should be very scared of how much more it's going to make us work. So get into Deborah, so you don't have, no, I'm kidding.
Can I add to that? Yeah. I don't think, just kind of piggyback off of that. In the world that I think we're all talking about, we are curious people, right? We're curious. We want to know how things work. Kids want to know how things work, right? We want to tinker, we want to play, we want to break it, we want to fix it, we want to understand it, we want assistance in doing it. And giving an explorative platform like generative AI, all of this information across, you name the industry, right? It could be revolutionary. But in my mind, I see it as we're going to learn faster. And that could be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Threat actors are going to learn faster, right? Hopefully, those of us that are the defenders are going to learn faster too. Hopefully, we can keep up with that. But there's a scare. There's a scare that parallelism might skew to the other side, right? We just don't know what's going to happen there. But because we're curious in nature, that curiosity may take that, generative AI platforms in directions that we've not even conceived of yet, because those ideas haven't been thought of, because those ideas could come from the generative AI platform itself in parallel or in concert with the individuals working with it. And so you're going to see a hockey stick movement this is just my opinion, and I could be completely wrong. I don't think I will be, but I think you will see a rise in knowledge and a rise in ability across technology, across defending it, across attacking it, across all of these industries, because now we have such a powerful assistant that can learn, faster than even we ourselves, one individual, can learn, right? When I was, back when I first got started in Linux, and I was, mentoring to be a kernel developer, and I was focused on some of these things, we started building some computative models around DNA sequencing. Because I was very interested, I have stage 3 kidney disease, and I'm very interested in healthcare. I'm very interested in how things can improve health overall. generative AI can certainly do that. Imagine a world where you can have these platforms be able to start understanding things like DNA sequencing, things like, healthcare and where health is, looking at patterns across all of these different patients and the way that these patients interact, and identifying areas where it's not just preventative medicine anymore. It can be, proactive medicine, or it can be something that can happen, right? The sky is the limit, and we are going to see a rise in our ability to learn, is what I'm forecasting.
Absolutely. Sort of working off your comment, I totally agree with the hockey stick graph of AI. And I've been looking at AutoGPT and some other technologies there. But I've always been sort of obsessed with creating my own red team helper, if you will, like a natural language red teamer that I can talk to and just have it go do stuff for me. And I'm seeing with the models of having the LLMs talk to each other and create a plan and go off and work on the plan like AutoGPT will do. I think that's going to leave me in the dust very quickly unless I jump on board, and I'm fully on board with writing that hockey stick graph all the way up and stuff. But I see that where I feel like we're going to run into AI superintelligence because of that sort of concept where AI is helping us learn and do at a much greater rate than we're used to. I think it will help engineers create a super intelligent AI in the not too distant future. I don't want to put a date on that, but soon-ish, and that's going to create a whole new set of problems. How do we control that, and how do we sort of work with it versus having it take a dark path? But it's an exciting ride, and it's going to be fun.
Just to add on to that, I think that AI ethics is going to be the next big use case, or not use case, but career path in AI. If you want to work in AI and you really want to help develop it, get into AI ethics, because these models, frankly, are created by guys like us.
Yeah, I love that.
We don't represent this industry. We don't represent this state. We don't represent this country. But 85 or 95% of these models are created by guys that look like us. And so if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're LGBTQ, you need to get into AI ethics because we can't do it.
That's right.
And if we don't do it, you're going to see stuff like HireVue. And I bring up HireVue because there are studies about how the HireVue AI model, which is all AI based, goes and makes their hiring decisions, and it filters up white, straight men to the top. And so the ethics behind these models have to be released, have to be peer reviewed, and we need more people getting involved in it because it's gonna not end well if we don't.
Here, here. Absolutely.
So I asked ChatGPT about the impact of generative AI over the next 5 to 10 years, and ethical considerations and challenges was one of them.
And we don't talk about it enough. When we talk about AI,
Yeah.
we talk about how great it is that it can go and generate code or do something, but we don't talk about the socio-economic implications.
And we're so far.
And we're far behind as a society, and we're going to be even farther behind because programming just does what we input.
There's a couple of different areas that it touches on in that. One of them is the algorithmic biases that you mentioned, but then also data privacy, which we touched on, ownership of AI generated content, because where's it coming from? The other is
Well, real quick, Ken, how do you license content generated by the generative AI? Who owns that, right? And where do you draw legal precedent? That's going to be a future question.
That's why all of the images in my PowerPoint, AI generated. Is that the one I?
and then the last one was deep fakes.
Yes.
You had touched on,
We've seen it.
on our ability, how much we'll be able to learn, but like, are we learning the right things?
We saw deep
Is the
fakes. earlier
information
this week.
accurate? Yeah.
When there was a Russian media outlet that was talking about some big attack that happened in the United States that never happened.
The Pentagon.
The Pentagon, and they took,
Oh,
and it was talking about how the Pentagon got bombed. And it hit Twitter and everybody's like, no, it didn't happen. But what happens when a video of Joe Biden comes out saying something really stupid or another presidential candidate? They're gonna say stupid things by themselves, but if it's so offensive that it creates a war. Yes, go ahead, you can try.
What I see in the future is that anyone in security has job security. Because, honestly, because my co-founder from the generative AI thing I did years ago, he's VP of engineering at, a startup in Atlanta. And he knows that he's got engineers using this already, right? He could tell when GPT went into beta and people started making, 3 times as many tickets per sprint as they had before. And I think, you guys are great minds and you're thinking about this, like these great applications from the top down. Me coming from the consulting world, I see people under stress. I see people under time stress, job stress. People are going to use generative AI, whether they're supposed to or not. They're going to find a way around it if there are barriers. This stuff is going to get in the code bases of every company. And the great bugs and the great security openings and problems of the next decade are probably already committed right now. Like they're there, they're out there. These problems are going to be around for a long time. And I think maybe one of the biggest things is trying to get a hold of, at the base level, your lowest level engineers, like some way to get a hold of people and how they use that. Because all these initiatives right now are coming down from the top and have, grand structures and grand plans, but they're ignoring the reality, which is people are already using it and who knows, because I mean, some of the worst, in my experience, some of the worst security issues that I've seen have come from very smart people under time pressure, copying and pasting blog posts, right? Not understanding one little configuration thing that was not germane to their company, to their code base, and doing something that combined with the rest of their environment was disastrous, and that same thing, the same people under the same time pressures are going to be using generative AI to make their work go faster. And they are not going to know even roughly where the holes may be. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
I think it's gonna take plagiarism to a whole nother level.
Well, and you've already seen that there have been plugins written to detect plagiarism so that you can, just like we have scholarly.
But the false positives are.
But the false positives,
Right.
right, so how do you know? And one thing I'll add is if you want a good book to read about algorithmic bias, it's called Weapons of Math Destruction.
Yes.
And it's a great book that talks about the inherent problems of algorithmic bias and how it gets in, how it's non-purposely inserted into these AI models.
That's weapons of math.
Math.
Destruction.
Well, I'll just throw out one more thing that I think is gonna come if it hasn't already, is we talked a little bit about the deep fake you guys brought up. I think that the next wave of BEC that's gonna happen is, the super common thing right now, or has been for years, is they get in and then they send a wire instructions. And I think what's gonna happen next is now, right before that email goes out, there's gonna be a deep fake phone call that goes out and says, hey, I'm the owner of this company. It's gonna be that owner's voice calling the banker and saying, hey, I'm gonna send you some wire instructions. I'm about to get on a plane, but please make sure you wire these things. Because we've been telling people for years, you get a wire instruction, pick up the phone and call them, right? So go ahead. I think they're gonna call the bank. The threat actor is gonna call the bank. They're gonna spoof the owner's phone number and it's gonna spoof the owner's voice and say, hey, I'm gonna send you some wire instructions.
I already have a safe word with my parents.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I said.
It's what I've been telling everyone is use a safe word.
Yeah.
You have to have a code word. Yep. You have to have a code word. Because we see it all the time. We see it with the SMS messages that we get. Hey, go buy these gift cards, send them to me. Right? You see this all the time. And now we've got telemarketers that are calling about my auto warranty that aren't recordings anymore. They, hello? And
Yes.
and it'll have a conversation with you. You can go to a website and say, go write me a song that sounds like it's sung by Garth Brooks, but written by Metallica, and it will kick it out in the voice of Garth Brooks. These deep fact, we're gonna have to come up with some responses like code words and multi-factor authentication for when we get a phone call.
Something with BBC, if a threat actor can get into, let's say, Microsoft, somebody who has a lot of access to a wide variety of different companies, and get into their email, and then just carry on the conversations of the emails that are in there, and then put like links in there, and before you know it, hundreds of companies.
You don't even have to get into their email. Outlook, I can call by API.
Yeah.
Right? If I use Office 365, I can manipulate the Office 365 API to send emails on my behalf.
Yeah.
Probably should think about not doing that. But it's true, but I can use it, but what do I use it for? I use it for automated detection and response and automated events. Now I just have to get in and it took me, I left eFile Cabinet in September, and I had been at NetApp for 2 weeks before I got a CEO phishing attack, but not from my CEO, from some guy in Israel in our development center that is a high-level product manager that I had never met. So what do I have to do? I have to go on Slack and say, hey, so-and-so, is this really you? And if it's not, you should know that this is happening because it took them 2 weeks to find it.
You gotta hope that their Slack's not compromised.
Right. That's the concern. Because how do I know I'm not the CEO calling up the bank with a deep fake to send wire instructions? Yep.
Yeah, it's going back to old school spycraft, like what's the password?
We should just go back to.
Right, yeah.
People are going to return to office.
Right.
Only do that you can see.
The threat vector is like, that is one of, I will never return to the office. You couldn't make me, but I can see where companies would start to make it part of their security protocol that to do certain things, you have to be in the office, you have to be on the corporate network, you have to be authenticated with your zero trust authentication methods. Right? You're gonna have to really identify who you are.
Because your body becomes a token.
Right? Your body is now, your body is now your multi-factor. Right?
Well, you have proctored exams
Right.
that, because of COVID, right? People could sit at home, turn on their camera. Well, now if I want to take a test for Richard, not that I would pass the test better than Richard, because he would do way better than me. But if I want to pass a test for Richard, we'll put software. Now I can take a test as him.
Man, all you need is a Zoom filter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Because now you can change how you react. It was like when I had my little Zoom filter of myself bringing myself coffee in the middle of a meeting. And you'd be watching me and I'd walk up and bring them pour and set up my coffee. It was great. And it made everybody laugh, but it's a deep thing.
I mean, kind of related to that, man, hiring is gonna get so much harder.
Yes.
People already running into this, lots of arguments back and forth. Well, okay, are all of our engineers, people gonna be using ChatGPT? So we just let them use it during the interview and okay, they solved that 2-hour question in 5 minutes. Does that mean they're very good and very smart, know how to use modern tools? Or, you know, what are we even testing for anymore? And I feel like it's gonna be a really rough period as these tools become more and more common, because what are you even trying to, you know, ascertain when you've got a bunch of different candidates?
Well, this is where we're gonna have to humanize our questions. When we go into that interview process, we're gonna have to make it more human applicable, right? So that it's not as easy for them to leverage ChatGPT or some generative AI to come up with some response.
This means we're going back to the Google, how does it work? What's better, the round manhole or the square? Right?
Yes.
But it answers this perfectly, because there's been 10,000 blog posts written about this.
Awesome. Well, any other questions before we wrap up?
Good, 'cause
Nope.
this chair's
Anything else from online?
Yeah, you could do that. And what question should I be asking the panel? but
I like your
Don't do
disclaimer
that.
at the bottom of the event, right, that said this was all done, this was all
yeah.
made by generative AI. That was great.
We'll close with this then, because I think where we're at right now is, I think within a year, every job, especially knowledge worker jobs, is going to change significantly. I do some work in project management and customer success. And just looking at the use cases within that realm, there are so many things that it can help an individual be more effective at, right? And be able to scale. So this is a technology that you need to know in the space that we're talking about. We talked about a lot of theoretical things right now.
Yeah.
But theoretical things that are accomplishable, not just theoretical, like within 3 to 6 months, there are technologies that can do it. There are technologies now that can listen to a phone call, listen to a session like this, provide you notes back, and then flag the action items that were figured out, which in my current jobs, part of my current job, and I'm super excited about that because that's my least favorite part.
So we have that embedded into Teams.
Yep.
It's already, right? You can have it, you transcribe it, and then out of that transcribe, it'll actually list out actions. It'll list out individuals who should own those actions, and it'll even list out options for meetings for those actions, and it will give you a whole comprehensive list.
Great, and pretty soon I'll start scheduling meetings too.
Yes, they will. Well,
Like half my job is gone.
What am I gonna do with all my free time now that I don't have to schedule them the 10 meetings? Well,
he's gonna go fishing and hunting. don't you?
But it's there, right?
I'm with them.
This is a real thing, and I was thinking about it, and I've had some conversations about it being like getting a calculator back in the day. But I think it's more like getting a PC and empowerment of people to work faster and better than.
This is getting the whole internet of one day and getting high-speed internet
And-
right off the bat at same
And the airplane.
And the air, all
It's
of
the
it.
same
Yeah.
week.
And talking further into the future, not just year out, but years out, they're talking about having what would effectively be the large language models, right? A learning that you can also almost matrix and through an interface in the brain, download knowledge, right? I want to know how to fly a helicopter. You download that knowledge on how to fly a helicopter.
We're in the matrix.
Right?
Yeah.
We're on the cusp of those types of things. That this is something that you really, as a cybersecurity professional, have to pay attention to. You have to dive into it, understand the technology. I've spent hours just in preparing the 4 or 5 slides to understand how the technology works, what's involved with it, because we're going to have to figure out how to defend it. Some of us are going to have to create policies and procedures, and we'll talk about this next month. We have a couple of people that have faced this already and created policies and procedures for their organizations and where you can use it and where you can't use it. And to what Jake said, realizing that people are going to use it and how do you react to it as a cybersecurity professional. So something super important. Thank you all for coming out. Give a round of applause to our panelists, please. Watch the event, right? We'll send out messaging about our future event. And again, if you have any topics that you want to learn about, that's super interesting to you, let us know. Otherwise, keep doing things that are interesting to us. So thanks, everybody. There's more pizza out. Feel free.
Yeah,
to
take all the pizza.
hang out and network.
Thanks also to our online people.
Yes.
Here we go.